So today we're going to be talking about Chapter 25, Section 2. It's titled Industrialization. We're going to be talking about the factory system and how this changes the way that people live, changes the way they work, but yeah, it does create a number of problems.
Even though the first mechanical spinning and weaving machines in America were copied from English machines, one truly American invention, called the cotton gin, helped revolutionize the textile industry. Cotton plants produce excellent fibers, and in America's southern states, cotton was very cheap to produce because unpaid slaves were used to grow and harvest the crop. Yet even though the demand for cotton was great, before the invention of the cotton gin, it was not widely used in textiles. That was because cotton fibers are contained in the plant's seed pods, and before the fiber can be spun into threads, the seeds must be removed. Cleaning cotton was a very slow process when done by hand. But after 1793, the year Eli Whitney invented his cotton gin, simply by turning a crank, it was possible to remove as many seeds from raw cotton in a single day as 50 people could do using just their hands. Because the cotton gin made the fibers more readily available, there was a great increase in cotton production. Consequently, there was an increase in the number of slaves working on plantations as well. After the invention of the cotton gin, the raising of cotton rapidly became the backbone of the economy in the southern United States.
Anticipated, some will see. For one, like many of you guys said, factory work pays better. I don't want to work from sunup to sundown digging in the dirt. I just don't. But also, lots of other people are doing that, and so I don't stand to make a whole lot of money as a farmer. But working in a factory, even though it's dismal, it's repetitive, it's dangerous, it pays better. And so guess what? That's where I'm going to go. And it also spurs a demand for more expensive goods. What am I going to do with all that money? Well, feed my family. Well, pay for housing. But guess what? The big ticket is now I'm going to have extra money. And since I'm not spending all my time farming, I'm going to buy food. I'm going to buy tools. I'm going to buy clothes. Those are huge changes. And guess where I'm going to live? I'm going to live in a city. Why? Because that's where the factories are. So more people go to factories, ergo more people go to cities. This is called urbanization. And so the growing urban population provides a cheap source of labor because everything works off supply and demand, meaning that if a lot of people live in a city and if I set up a factory there, that means there's a lot of unemployed people. That means I can pay them whatever they'll work for. Oh, you won't work for a penny a day? That guy will. Oh, you won't work for half a penny a day? That guy will. Oh, you won't work for just food on your table? That guy will. And so if I can locate near large population centers, then I can have access to cheap labor. So a few examples: London, Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool. Those are just some in Great Britain that are all factory. But living in these towns, it's gross. No running water, no sanitation, sickness is widespread. Cholera is common. And so occasionally plagues would break out and people would die. In fact, the average lifespan in an urban city like Manchester was only 17 years. That gross, folks. And guess what? People were flocking to them. They knew the risk. They knew the downsides. But it was better than the farms. Meanwhile, wealthy business people, and well as owners of these factories, lived in very luxurious homes outside of the city. And these cities were really growing faster than their ability to keep up. It's not rocket science to keep your place clean and you're going to be healthier. This doesn't require an understanding of bacteriology to deal with your human waste in an efficient manner. But since cities were growing so crowded, okay, so you do your business in a bucket. You're in the middle of the city of Manchester. Where do you take that bucket? Are you going to walk the miles and miles and miles outside of the city every time you do your business? No. You're going to dump it out the window. You and 10 million of your best friends are going to dump it out the window. Works fine if you're in the woods. Not trying to be too specific, but works fine if you're in the woods. Doesn't work fine if you're in the city. And so without sanitary codes, without building codes, occasionally these cities would just catch on fire and burn to the ground. They're all made out of wood. There's not adequate access to education or police or fire or even housing for that matter. But people were still flocking to these cities.
During the 19th century, while the southern states developed a slave-based agricultural economy, the New England states became the center of America's industrial revolution. There were several reasons why industrialization took hold in New England. First, the region's many large rivers provided excellent sources of water power. Second, it was easier for New Englanders to shift to an economy based on manufacturing due to the fact that the area's rocky soil was poorly suited for farming. Third, New England had a number of fine seaports that could be used for bringing in raw materials and transporting out finished goods. And fourth, thanks to decades of success in the transatlantic shipping business, there were people in New England with large sums of money who wanted to invest in factories.
All right, so you got a job in a factory. Congratulations. You're going to make more money than what you did on the farm. It's going to look up for you. What's my work day look like? Need you here at 7 o'clock. Okay, when do I go home? You go home at 9 o'clock. Really? But when do I play Fortnite? You don't. Why? Well, you're going to be too tired. Because we need you there 7 o'clock. Okay. When's my day off? You get Sunday. What about Saturday? Nope. Don't be a communist. You get Sunday. People fought and died for the weekend, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. People have died so that you can have a Saturday. That's a thing. So anyway, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. Well, do we get holidays? No. Well, I don't think I like that job. It's fine. There's 100 other people waiting for your job. Don't care. Have a nice life. Well, okay, so I've got the job. I accepted these conditions because, after all, it's better than the farm. Well, what's it going to look like? Well, we don't clean these places. Why? Well, that takes time away from making money. We don't provide adequate lighting. Why? Well, that costs money. Well, let's think about coal, for example. So, okay, so now at the Industrial Revolution, we have these exciting things called trains and steamboats. Yay! Well, how are we going to power those things? Coal. Where's coal come? The ground. You ever dug a tunnel? Oh, maybe I'm the only one with way too much free time as a kid. Once upon a time as a kid, I dug a tunnel just to see what would happen. It collapsed. Luckily, I wasn't buried alive. I mean, I didn't get that far because guess what? If you dig a tunnel into a hill, it will immediately collapse. Now, if you really had too much free time, you maybe were clever enough to support said tunnel. Anybody ever go that far? How about snow tunnels? I mean, we just had 2 feet of snow. Did anybody build a snow tunnel? Okay. Did your snow tunnel make it?
Yeah.
Okay. So it did not collapse?
It was ice at that time.
Ah, so it was supported. Okay, yeah. So self-supported. Since it was ice, that makes sense. Anybody build an earthen tunnel? Am I really the only one? Okay. Way too much free time. I guess smartphones have ruined us all, but true, and it's dangerous, so I don't recommend it. But yeah, if you ever have way too much free time and you're feeling risky, try to dig a tunnel. The point is, my grandpa worked in a mine, and he quit when, guess what, a tunnel collapsed and killed somebody. And he was like, look, this is dangerous. Yes, it's dangerous. And that was a commercialized mine. We're talking professional operation with heavy equipment. They had supports, big steel beams that hold the tunnels up. Still, collapsed, killed a guy. These things are very dangerous. But that's where we got trains. But you know what? I mean, with all the dangers, with all the difficulties, people still went to work in these factories. And when someone would die, someone else would take their job. Why? Because life is better than the farms. And guess what? Some of those people did well for themselves. You know, a lot of factory work is mundane, repetitive, dangerous, and you're easily replaced. But some factory work is highly skilled. Somebody has to be able to fix the machines. Somebody has to be able to manage the workers. And these people are professionals. And guess what? They become a part of the growing middle class. But this middle class was called new money by the old wealthy aristocrats, who often resented the fact that so many people were doing well for themselves and actually gaining a comfortable standard of living. Most people, however, were part of the working class. You know, these are your unskilled workers in factories and dangerous jobs that are easily replaced, and often those jobs would be replaced by machines. Because after all, if a machine can do your job, you're easily replaceable. You know, it's why you're probably not hoping to become a professional driver. Why? Because those jobs will be replaced by machines in 10 years. It's a scary thought when you think of all the millions of drivers in this country. Now, there were some people that resented the fact that machines seem to be taking over. The robot revolution is not a new idea. In fact, there were people resisting the robot revolution back in the 1700s. They called themselves Luddites. They would go around destroying machines because the machines were taking their jobs. Yeah, them machines taking our jobs. Boom, boom, boom. Because when we were an agrarian society, you grew food or you starved. But now that we're an industrial society, we have a new phenomena called unemployment.
When the Industrial Revolution began in England, the earliest textile factories employed many young children and paid them almost nothing. But that changed in America because by the mid-1800s, 8 out of every 10 workers in the textile factories were unmarried women between the ages of 15 and 30. Most of them had left behind quiet lives on isolated farms for the adventure of working in a city and earning a steady wage. The conditions were not good in the textile factories, but they did improve over time. The machines tended to be extremely loud and dangerous to operate. The hours were long. The work was quite monotonous, and the air in the factories was filled with tiny bits of fiber that damaged the workers' lungs. The wages were low as well. The mill girls, as they were called, earned less than $3 for putting in a 6-day, 60-hour work week, while men got $1 more a week for doing the same jobs. The lives of the mill girls were almost completely controlled by the factories where they worked. For example, right across the street from this textile factory are the company-owned boarding houses where they slept and ate their meals. Here, the girls were carefully supervised and followed a strict curfew, but they were provided with respectable surroundings that were often more comfortable than those they had known back on the farm. However, as the 19th century rolled on, unskilled factory jobs began to be filled more and more often by recent immigrants to America instead of farm girls. Such jobs provided many immigrant families with a reliable income with which to start their new lives.
Finding a job can be difficult, but in a city, you have to find a job to survive. It's not like in an agrarian culture where you grow food to survive. So there's immediate benefits, ergo jobs, prosperity in the country, and technological progress. In fact, education comes with this. Things become cheaper. People actually begin to eat better food as that whole process becomes standardized. Over time, the workers went shorter hours. Obviously, the 14-hour day is no longer a norm. Obviously, pay to the lowest bidder is no longer tolerated by federal law. We have minimum wage, and we also have decent working conditions. If the ceiling falls on me right now, well, I can file workers' comp. I can go to the hospital. I can be paid for my time while I'm in the hospital, and it's all covered by federal law. So there's also long-term effects of this. I'm no longer dying at 42 from an axe from a Viking. I'm likely to live longer. And yes, I'm going to have to pay taxes, and those taxes allow governments to provide services. There's a number of negative effects, though. Pollution. Digging coal comes at a cost. You're basically digging holes in a mountain. And in some cases, you're actually digging holes in the earth, big giant ones. And trees. The logging era in about 1900 is the reason why we have very few trees that are older than 200 years old left in this country. But another of the long-term effects, education. If you're going to, if there's a factory demand for a lot of skilled workers in a certain field, well, that's where schools grew up to train people to work in those particular industries.
When the Industrial Revolution began in England, the earliest textile factories employed many young children and paid them almost nothing. But that changed in America because by the mid-1800s, 8 out of every 10 workers in the textile factories were unmarried women between the ages of 15 and 30. Most of them had left behind quiet lives on isolated farms for the adventure of working in a city and earning a steady wage. The conditions were not good in the textile factories, but they did improve over time. The machines tended to be extremely loud and dangerous to operate. The hours were long. The work was quite monotonous, and the air in the factories was filled with tiny bits of fiber that damaged the workers' lungs. The wages were low as well. The mill girls, as they were called, earned less than $3 for putting in a 6-day, 60-hour work week, while men got $1 more a week for doing the same jobs. The lives of the mill girls were almost completely controlled by the factories where they worked. For example, right across the street from this textile factory are the company-owned boarding houses where they slept and ate their meals. Here, the girls were carefully supervised and followed a strict curfew, but they were provided with respectable surroundings that were often more comfortable than those they had known back on the farm. However, as the 19th century rolled on, unskilled factory jobs began to be filled more and more often by recent immigrants to America instead of farm girls. Such jobs provided many immigrant families with a reliable income with which to start their new lives.
Manchester is a case study. Manchester had a large population, ergo large supply of labor. It was right by a river, so large source of water power. It's right near the ocean, so it's easy to transport goods. It's the perfect place to set up a factory town. The poor lived and worked in very unhealthy, even dangerous conditions. Business owners often made profits at the risk of their own workers, but ultimately they were the ones investing their own money into these factories. Eventually the people in Manchester had a better standard of living, but this is what the average working class neighborhood in Manchester looked like. There's your backyard. There's your neighbors. You have no room whatsoever.
By the year 1900, industrialization was firmly in place across much of Europe and America. The century that had just ended had been one of drastic, rapid change on a scale unlike anything seen before in history. Huge numbers of rural people had moved to crowded cities and taken up factory work. Many of them now lived in homes illuminated with electric light bulbs. Their children attended public schools. They could listen to recorded music in their homes instead of going to a concert hall. They could even watch motion pictures, talk on the telephone, and ride in an automobile. For the Industrial Revolution had ushered in the modern age, and with it came not only tremendous technological and environmental changes, but a brand new middle class of hard-working people as well.
But imagine you're this kid. He's probably been working since he's 6. Doesn't look much older than 10 right now. He's barefoot because he can't afford shoes. And he's working long hours. And by the way, the machine he's working on will rip his arm off in a heartbeat. He's got to be very careful. But he's also exhausted because he's probably working 14 hours a day. He's probably malnourished because his family, all of them, by the way, are working as hard as they can just to earn the food on their plate.